Hello, everybody. Welcome to thoughtbot's Open Summit. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Sarah Lima. I am a developer and team lead at thoughtbot for around 5 years now. And today I'm excited to welcome Team Riley. Team leads the Hanami Dry and Realm projects. He's excited about small libraries, first-class functions, and pushing forward web development. Ruby, welcome, team, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah. It's good to be here. Do you want me to just get right into it?
Yeah, let's get to it.
Cool. Just a precursor. So this is a talk, and there should be some time at the end for Q&A of some sort. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or something as you go. I think Sarah will keep track of them,
Yeah,
and then we
will do.
can we can get through whatever we can get through at the end. All right, let me do this. No mistake about it. Ice is cold. Roses are red. I'm in love. And this love is about to carry me off somewhere. So it goes in the novel Sputnik's Sweetheart, a story of love, of distance, and the spaces between souls. Today, I want to tell a love story of my own, of a love for Ruby, and a love that carried me off somewhere. Today, we'll go on that journey together, guided by someone special. And our guide today is the author of those words, Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami. And before we set off, let's just get to know him a little bit. Now, some of you may have heard of Murakami already, probably from one of his more than 20 published novels. He's been writing since 1979 and is well and truly the most widely read Japanese novelist of his generation. His work has been translated into over 50 languages, which I think is just remarkable. Now, across all his books, Murakami's writing blends the surreal with the everyday. These are quiet, strange stories where the real action isn't what happens, but rather how it changes you. These are stories that kind of sneak up on you emotionally. Now, as I read Murakami, what snuck up on me the most was not one of his works of fiction, but rather his memoir, where he shares his passion for long distance running and its parallels with his life as a writer. When I read this book, what struck me was just how open and plain speaking Murakami was throughout it. Here he was, well and truly a literary giant, but in this piece, writing without pretense, showing us his own flawed humanity through his very personal account of his ups and downs of running and writing across the decades. And it has been many decades. Murakami has been at this long distance running thing almost as long as he's been a writer. He started back in 1982, around the time he decided to go full time with his writing. And he started running with a simple goal to improve his physical health and to create a healthy routine to structure his days. Then, once he started, he never stopped. 40 years have gone by, Murakami still runs every day, and he's run a marathon at least once in every year. Running became so core to his identity that Murakami made it the overarching theme to his memoir, and he called it What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And today I want to follow in this spirit, and I'll share what I talk about when I talk about Ruby. I was so inspired by this memoir that I wanted to follow its format for this little session today. I want to tell you some of my story, go back into some of my history, just like we saw with Thoughtbot, to speak to you as plainly and as personally as I can. And as I go, I'll share some parallels that I found striking between Murakami's life and what I've been doing living a life in Ruby open source. And this is what Ruby open source looks like for me. I lead these three projects today. We have Hanami, which is a complete app framework, Dry, a collection of libraries solving common tasks, and ROM, a powerful and flexible persistence toolkit. Now, if you've seen any of these before, it's likely because you've ventured somewhat outside of the Ruby and Rails mainstream. And I think it is fair to say that these tools have been countercultural, and much of it by design. My teammates and I built these because we felt the need for something different within Ruby. And as we shared these over the years, we certainly met resistance. And here I was struck by another aspect of Murakami's life, which is this man, who has been called one of the world's greatest living novelists, could also have his work roundly criticized at the same time. While he did attract many readers and fans in Japan, the Japanese literary establishment, the critics and other writers, would call out Murakami's work as being un-Japanese. And this would lead to him at one point calling himself a black sheep in the Japanese literary world. And as someone writing Ruby tools that intentionally pushed against the status quo, this black sheep feeling really hit me. And when I look back, I realize I've been a Ruby black sheep for 10 years now at least, from the moment I started building these tools back in 2015. Those 10 years ago, I had reached a point of stagnation personally as a Rails developer. I could tell, I'd stopped growing and learning like I wanted to be. The Ruby I had been writing no longer felt right for me. And I knew I needed some kind of change to reach my next level as a developer. Now, at that time, it was popular for Rubyists to go leave for languages like Elixir, which were pretty new and shiny at the time, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay with Ruby because, well, I love Ruby. And yes, this is the love story I promised you at the start. You see, I got lucky and I found Ruby all the way back in 2002. And I've been using it ever since. So I loved Ruby and I didn't want to leave. What I did then was look around for the other black sheep in the Ruby world to see what they were doing and to see if I could join in. And it's that changed my world, which carried me off somewhere. What I found in those other black sheep were the seeds of what became, after 10 years of effort, the Hanami Dry and ROM projects that we have today. And today we'll look at where we're going in the future. And in proper memoir style, we'll split this into chapters. In chapter 1, I'll share what you need to know to become a running Hanami developer. And in chapter 2, I'll look at the evolution Hanami can bring to Ruby and why I think that's essential. And then in chapter 3, we'll wrap up by sharing what I'm going to do to help make all of that happen. So let's get started. Let's lace up our shoes, follow in Murakami's footsteps, and hit the road. Friends, it's time for us to run a race. And learning Hanami will be the race we run today, a race towards a different style of Ruby. And on starting races, in his memoir, Murakami wrote, "The first few miles are always a test. I'm nervous, but I know that if I just keep moving forward, I'll settle into a rhythm. I always do." Today, we're going to see some Ruby that might look unfamiliar to you, and this itself will be its own kind of test. But don't worry, I know that you'll all move forward, and together we'll settle into a rhythm here too. So let's get started. Let's install Hanami and then run Hanami new to create a new app. And for today, we'll call this one Bookshop. Then we can hop inside, run Hanami dev to start our development server. And then here we're greeted by a lovely welcome screen, helping us access everything we need to get started with our app. Now from here, we can finally hop into some code and check out the app class itself. And this is nice and simple. We won't need to spend too long here, but there is one thing to point out, and it's that all app code in Hanami lives inside a single namespace, matching the app's namespace. So here we have module Bookshop. This is the module all of our code will live within. Now from the app, we can move over to our routes, and we see here we have our first real step we need to take. To make our app real, we need to add some kind of route. And to do this, we can generate an action. And Hanami gives us a friendly generator we can run. So let's make an action for a products index for our bookshop. And we see here it's made a route, and this looks straightforward. A get request to products will take us through to our index action. Let's check out the action now. This is what the generator made. And the thing to know about actions in Hanami is that they're the part of our app that deals with our HTTP interactions. And we have exactly one action class per endpoint. And it's this handle method where we put our logic, working with the request and response objects that we're given. But already this empty starter action is enough for us because by default, it renders a matching view. And here's that view now. Just like actions, every view in Hanami has its own class. And the job of the view class is to prepare exposures. These are the things, the values that we want to make use of inside the view's template. So for a products index, we'll want an array of products. But where do we put the logic there, the job of fetching the products from our database? Well, to do this, we can get to know one of Hanami's most important features, which is in Hanami, our app is also a container. And a container here works as a central organizing object that's responsible for loading and managing access to all the components in our app. Our view is already a component, and we can fetch it from the app container like this using a key that matches its name. And then what we get back is an instance of that view ready to work with. So in fact, any class we put into app will get made available as a component. So in our case, let's go ahead and make a component for a product repo. This can be the thing that returns the list of products to our view. And once again, we have a generator that can help us. Here we'll make a product repo. And this is how the repo looks. And inside this product repo class, we can add a method to find and return the latest products from our database. And here we're working with a full-powered API that will let us construct any kind of query to our liking. So now we have two components. We have our view, and we have our repo. But how do we get them to know about each other? What we really want to do is use this repo inside our view. Well, for this, we can use Hanami's depths mixin. We can include this mixin inside any class in a Hanami app, not just the framework vendor classes, but any class at all, and then pass the list of components that we want to make available as dependencies. And those components become available as instance methods that we can use wherever we need inside our class. What we're doing here is classical dependency injection, just made easy and low friction thanks to this mixin. And using depths like this is central to how we can create high-level behavior by bringing together a range of smaller, more focused components. And in the case of our view, that's enough for us to go ahead, expose the latest products from our product repo over to our template, where we can work with them to prepare the HTML we need. So with that done, we can hop back over to our running Hanami server and make a request and see our products come back as HTML. So that's it. We made our first working feature with Hanami, everybody. Well done. And what this means is that we're now fully into this race. And on this, Murakami writes, after running for a while, your muscles sort of forget what they're doing. You don't have to think. You just become the act of running. So let's become the act of building our app and learn a few more Hanami features. And we can start by looking at the testing experience. How can we test this view we just created? Well, like every part of Hanami, views are designed to be directly testable. We can call new directly on our view class and even pass in a test double for that product repo dependency. This will let us control its behavior for the purposes of this test. And that's enough for us to go ahead, call the view, and assert that its output meets our expectations. Now, what we're seeing here is a very low-level, isolated unit test. And for most things like views or actions, we won't need to go this far. A more helpful approach to take would be to make an integrated end-to-end test, something that calls our app from the outside, like a feature spec. And these are available in every new Hanami app. But the thing to take away here is that because all Hanami objects are designed to be directly testable, just like we see here, it means we get to make, as app authors, the best testing choice for each situation. So we've seen how we can interact with our code through tests. We can also do so in the console. And in the console, we can use this app shortcut to get to our app. And then from there, we can access our components, which come back as instances that we can use and interact with directly there on the REPL. Now, one component that Hanami gives us by default is our settings. These are the values that we give our app to help it run correctly in each environment, things like keys, secrets, and flags. And we can declare our settings here. Say we wanted to send emails when new products are created. And to do this, we're using a third-party email service. Well, here we can create a setting for its API key. And we can declare its type as well. This will ensure we never boot our app into an unpredictable state. These settings are then loaded from matching environment variables and when you're working locally from .env files as well. After that, we can now access our settings as yet another component in our app called settings. And from there, we can confidently refer to each of the settings we've defined just by using their own methods. So aside from settings, so far we've only seen components that come loaded from the classes that we define in our own app directory. But what about components that might need some kind of special handling as part of their setup? Well, this is where providers help, and we need to make one now for our email service. We've already created the setting for that API key, now we need to use it. Providers have their own folder in config, and here we're registering one for that email service. And then in our provider, we can work across a range of lifecycle steps. So in this case, we'll start by requiring the gem for our third-party email service. And then we'll grab our API key from the settings component that we just worked with, pass it in to configure a new working instance of our email service client, and then we'll register that client as a component in our app called email service. And what this means now is that any class using email service as a dependency will get the fully configured client that we've just set up here. Now, by this point, we've covered nearly everything we need to know about Hanami, but there is one more important thing for us to discover, and that's slices. Slices help us organize our app into separate domains or technical concerns, and they're a fantastic way for introducing modularity and clearer internal boundaries to our app as it grows. Now, in a brand new Hanami app, you won't see slices appear, and that's because we chose to keep that first run experience as simple as possible. But they are built in, and they'll appear as soon as we start putting code into the slices directory. And once again, we can do this with the slice generator. So let's go ahead and make an admin slice now. This will prepare an admin slice directory for us, and this is where we can put our code, like say a products create action. Just like our app, every slice maps to a single Ruby namespace, so here we'll be working within admin. And Hanami gives us a slice class that we can use. And this behaves exactly like our app, offering access to components, with the only difference being that it's confined to the components within its own slice directory. And also, just like the app, slices have their own deps mixin, with the same restriction. It only loads components from inside the slice. So now we've seen that both the app and slices act as containers for our components. And then, thanks to our deps mixin, we can also clearly recognize the relationships between those components and begin to see and think about our app as a kind of big directed graph. Well, from here, we can also take things one step further because slices can import components from other slices, which means that we can now envision an equally clear graph of all of our app's high-level concerns. This is a really powerful approach. Here we have the tools built right into the framework to help us organize our code at every level for easier understanding and maintainability. And slices also give us flexibility around our operations because we can configure which slices we want to load for each specific deployment of our app. So now we've learnt everything we need to know about Hanami's features. And that means that we get to head to the finish line. And on finishing, Murakami writes, "I didn't care what place I finished. I didn't care about the time. Just making it to the end, still running, meant everything." In these large running races, it's rarely about the other competitors. It's more about meeting your own goals. And when he wrote this, Murakami's goal was to make sure he ran at every point in the race, no matter how fatigued he felt. And I think we can continue to run here too, to make one last go at this, expand on our app, and get closer to a well-rounded feature. And these next steps are the same that I've taken when building production apps like this for the last 10 years. There are some really simple patterns that have held true over this whole time. So let's dive in, and we'll start again with actions, since they're the outermost layer in our app. Now, we built a read action before with our index, and it didn't really have to do anything. This time around, we'll make an update action and we'll implement some of our own HTTP logic. But the first thing we do is, because we want every action to be as thin as possible, we bring in a dependency from the app. So here we bring in an operation object for updating a product. And then inside the actions handle method, we call the operation, passing in the product ID and the params from the request, and then work on its result. Now, in the case of a success, we can redirect back to the product path. Job's done. But if the operation fails, we'll re-render the edit screen along with any relevant error messages. So even for a more involved action here, this is still small and understandable. And that's because we choose to push as much logic as we can deeper into the app and focus here on the HTTP concerns only. So let's go that step deeper now and look at this update operation. So here it is. And again, we start with some more depths. In this case, we'll bring in a validation contract as well as that product repo we created earlier. Now, this object is callable, with the call method here being its only piece of public API. And then inside, the first thing we do is validate the product attributes that are passed to us by running them through this contract. What we're doing here is the kind of attribute validation that you'd typically see attached to a model in a Rails app, but here we're doing it with a standalone object, which means we can tailor the validation to each specific use case in our app, and we get to keep it separate from the concerns of database persistence. Now, we won't visit the contract in detail here, but it's built using the dry validation gem if you'd like to learn more. This is a gem that fits in brilliantly in Hanami apps, but it's built to work with any kind of Ruby app, Rails included. But moving on, if the attributes are valid, we'll then update the product via our repo and return that updated product as our success. Otherwise, we call this a failure and pass the validation errors back to the caller. Now, what we see here with success and failure are two sides of what we call a result object. This creates a wrapper over our specific return values, which means the caller has to consider both the success and the failure cases. This is great for consistency, but it's also great for expressiveness, because it's this that enabled the lovely case statement with the pattern matching that we saw back in our action. And these success and failure results, and in fact this whole class, comes part of the dry operation gem, which is a brand new gem we created to release alongside Hanami 2.2 last year. And this gem provides a streamlined, batteries included experience for building these service classes, and it provides all the tools we need for operations to remain clear and maintainable, even as they grow more complex. And again, this is a gem that you can drop into any Ruby app. I've just shown it here in Hanami. So now we have one final step to take to go one layer deeper and return to our product repo. And this should feel familiar. It's the same repo we made before. But now we'll add some methods for creating and updating products in our database. What we're doing here is beginning the journey of defining our very own persistence API for our products. Over time, we'll grow this for each distinct way we want to work with products from our database, like fetching an individual product by its ID, or a paginated collection of products sitting within a category. These repos can scale all the way from the simplest to the most complex queries, all while using the same query API under the hood. And what this means is that these repos can serve as a single unified access layer to all our app's persisted data. And by building these repos ourselves, we bring intentionality to this access, because we're the ones creating the methods, we're the ones picking the meaningful names and then using those repos as dependencies. And together, this means we can much more effectively manage how we access this data all across our app. Adopting this repository pattern is one of the most impactful things that happened to me as I sought to learn a new style of Ruby app, because it has so many positive flow-on effects. And we can see one of these in action by looking at the objects these repo methods return, which is our own struct classes. These represent the various entities in our app, the nouns in our domain, and the repo uses these when it finds a matching class name, just like we have here with product. These are value objects only as well. They're just data, nothing else. No live connection back to the database, no way to trigger additional database queries, which means we can feel really confident in passing these around and using them across all parts of our app, knowing that things like accidental n+1s from our views are now a thing of the past. And inside this structs, we can of course expand on how we interact with our data by defining our own methods. Every attribute we select in our queries will be available for us to use, just like here with description. And our repos can return different kinds of structs too. All we need to do is specify the struct name in the query and the matching class will be used. So this shows how our repos can serve as the means of decoupling our app's business layer from the details of persistence. And as our app grows, we can further emphasize this decoupling because we're able to create repos that reflect all the distinct areas of our business domain, and we don't have to leave everything as a simple one-to-one mapping to an underlying database table. Now, there's only so many steps we can take in our time together today, but if any of this is interesting to you, come find me on the internet after and we can have a chat about how things can go from here. But by this stage, you've hopefully noticed some differences in our Hanami app compared to what you know of Rails. In Hanami, we prefer more focused classes. This means a greater number of classes overall, but also a clearer responsibility for each. And then we give you the tools to bring those focused classes together in a low friction way to realize your high level features. And each component in a Hanami app is also immutable. This takes away the entire dimension of time from your code, making each piece easier to understand, test, and combine. With Hanami, we want to bring that greater focus to the whole of app level too. So we encourage you to build your app in distinct layers rather than blending everything together. In Hanami apps, you'll at least have a HTTP layer, a business layer, and a persistence layer. And then with slices, you can choose to create as many other layers as you like, vertical or horizontally, to suit your app's domains. And what this means is that you get to work inside each layer with a focus on its needs alone. Hanami is also firmly of the opinion that the framework is not the same thing as your app. They're separate. We think the framework should work in service of your app, not the other way around. Hanami routes and actions, for example, are intended to work as the thinnest possible outer gateways into your app. And from there, the core business logic is yours, and it's supposed to be separate from those framework-provided facilities. And what this does is it means you can construct your business logic in whatever way makes sense for your domain. This is where you get to do actual software design, and it's within this space that I made my own leaps as a developer when I was looking to learn again. Now, we realize that all of these things are trade-offs and they won't suit everybody. But I bet there are some people in the audience here who are probably nodding along and thinking, yes, I wish I had things like this to help me as I build my apps. And what I'm proud of is that we've made this so accessible today. When I started on my personal journey of Ruby discovery back at the beginning of our story, it was a wilderness out there. To make an app that resembled this, I had to search far and wide, then cobble things together from scratch and even invent the pieces that were missing. But today we've turned it into a single gem install. You can jump right in and start playing. And that brings me to the next chapter, which is how Hanami can help bring about Ruby's next evolution and why I think it's essential. Now, it might be easy to look at all this Ruby I've just shared, especially with Hanami as a full stack framework, and think of it as in opposition to Rails. But just like the race we've just run, I don't see this in terms of direct competition. I don't see this as a black and white thing or an either or thing. I see it more as a yes and thing. Because so many of our Ruby gems can slot right into Ruby on Rails apps. They can help you level up in the areas you need it the most. Pull in dry operation, experiment with result objects as a way to combine your services. Play with advanced validation, with dry validation, put it in the one or two endpoints that need it the most. Or create your own strictly typed immutable value objects with dry types and dry structs. We've even had someone in our community experiment with mounting entire Hanami slices into Rails apps, and it works. But we're here for more than just Rails, though. We want to elevate all of Ruby. Just like Murakami felt a kinship with his fellow runners, we feel the same about our fellow Rubyists. These are our people, and we want to lift them up. We want our tools to work together with Ruby apps and Ruby gems of all kinds. So this is why Hanami is okonomi. That is the Japanese for as you like it. The choice is yours. This philosophy is at the core of everything we do. And while we do give you a cohesive batteries included framework as a starting point, two other things are true about it though. First, it's built on top of all of those gems that are independently useful, so you can use them independently as you like it in any kind of app. And second, Hanami itself is designed to let you remove pieces or replace them with other things, so your app can again be exactly as you like it. We want more of this, so I want to share some examples of the Okonomi Ruby that we want to help foster. Let me show you a few of my favorite Ruby gems. The first is Rhoda, which is a routing tree toolkit from Jeremy Evans. Rhoda lets you define your routes as a series of nested Ruby blocks. And if you like Rhoda, you can swap it in and use it instead of Hanami's routing layer. Next, we have Flex by Joel Draper. Flex lets you define your views entirely in Ruby as well, again, using nested blocks. And if you like that idea, well, you can use Flex instead of Hanami's views. Now, at this stage, you might say, yes, Ruby works with Ruby. What is the big deal? But what I haven't featured here are the thousands of Ruby gems that exist as Rails plugins alone. Rubyists using other frameworks cannot easily access their functionality. And I want Hanami to help change the picture here. And we're lucky to have some good examples to follow. We can turn back to another Jeremy Evans production, Rodorth. Jeremy calls this Ruby's most advanced authentication framework. And you know what? I believe him. And what's special about Rodorth is that it's built on top of Rhoda, which makes it lightweight and flexible. And this also means you can integrate Rodorth to natively authenticate Hanami actions. I have a blog post about this as well, which shares how you do it. Now, next we have Shrine by Janko Marinic. This is a Ruby gem for handling and saving file attachments. Now, Rails developers here might turn to active storage or older gems like Carrierwave or Paperclip. But what I like about Shrine is that while it also supports Rails, it's framework agnostic. It ships with support for a multitude of persistence libraries and app frameworks, thanks to its adapter-oriented architecture. So thanks to Shrine, if I want to build with a non-Rails framework, I still have access to best-in-class file upload support. This is a big deal. Janko didn't have to build Shrine like this. He could have written it for Rails alone and found himself a good many users. But instead, he made the righteous choice to enhance the entire Ruby ecosystem. And I love this because I love Ruby. And because I love Ruby, I love Shrine, Rodorth, Flex, and Rhoda. I think gems like these and the people behind them represent the best of Ruby. They push boundaries, they explore novel approaches that let us see and use Ruby in new ways. And they do all of this in a way that lifts up Ruby apps of all kinds. Rhoda was in fact my own gateway when I was seeking out a new style of Ruby. It was the first tool I picked up on my path towards Hanami. So I think it's great Hanami isn't the only example of Okonomi Ruby out there. There are some other folks, well, maybe black sheep like me at the moment, who care about these same things. And this kind of Okonomi Ruby, I'd love to see more of. But as much as I love Ruby all the while, I also worry about Ruby. I worry about Ruby because Ruby is like our knees. Murakami's memoir takes a startling turn when all of a sudden his right knee buckled while walking down some stairs. And in the end, he couldn't put any kind of weight on it for some extended time. And for someone who lives to run, this was a grave development. And it made Murakami pause and give serious thought to his knees for the first time. And as he reflected, you can replace your breath any number of times, but not your knees. These are the only knees I'll ever have, so I'd better take good care of them. When I worry about Ruby's knee health, I worry about Ruby's diversity or its lack of diversity because for too long in the Ruby community, I think we've had this tendency towards monoculture. And you might say, hey, well, maybe this is not a problem. I mean, here we are at this really nicely produced, well-attended Ruby event after all. But monocultures pose risks. Due to monoculture, we completely lost the world's default banana to root disease in the 1950s. And closer to home, when Internet Explorer completely dominated the web, we lost a decade of progress and innovation. And how did IE get to this position? Well, at the beginning, by being a good and free technology choice. And well, we have a good and free technology choice in Ruby too. That's Ruby on Rails. Rails is popular and for good reason, but if you zoom out, it's kind of the only show in town for Ruby. And while it does continue to evolve, it's also mature, which means its direction is already set. And there are certain parts and certain people that feel immovable at this point. And I think this has a chilling effect on Ruby creativity. And this is what I want to change. I'm trying to create a world where frameworks like Hanami are no longer outside the mainstream. Instead, I want to expand the mainstream and create a more pluralistic Ruby, where Hanami, but also gems like Rodauth and Shrine become commonplace. And this is the vision of the more diverse Ruby we want to build. So when we built our Hanami app earlier, we did so with the support of numerous libraries from the Dry project and that database layer powered by ROM. And it's in these three projects that we have our alliance of gems that we're trying to help shift the gravity within Ruby. And together, these all fit exceedingly well together. They offer outstanding breadth from focus libraries to a persistence toolkit, all the way through to a full framework. And for a while now, it's been the same team maintaining all of these projects. So this year, we're bringing them together and we're rebooting them and revitalizing our projects for the future. Hanami, Dry, and ROM are here to stay, but from now on, they'll be part of a new family. We're naming it Hanakai. This is our new gathering of Hanami, Dry, and ROM, and you are some of the first people to be hearing about this. We plan to launch this year sometime in December, but I'm very happy to share it with you today. And I'd love to hear from you afterwards what you think about this whole direction. Now, with the Hanakai name, we're continuing in the spirit of nature and community that we have from Hanami. In Japanese, loosely translated, Hanakai means a party of flowers. And with Hanakai, we're bringing our blossoms together, Hanami, Dry, and ROM, and we invite you to join us too, because we want to help your Ruby bloom. With Hanakai, we can elevate your apps from drop-in gems to the full framework experience we've seen today. With Hanakai, you can elevate your skills because you experience a different style of code. This blending of functional and object-oriented styles with clear separations of concern and clear data flows. And with Hanakai, we hope to elevate the Ruby community at large by creating this new center of gravity that encourages people to look at Ruby in a new light. So it's the start of a new era for us, and I'm very excited for it. But there is still a lot to make happen, and we have some clear goals that we're working towards. The first is to establish this new unified community. And we're well on the way here. We have a unified chat. We're building a fantastic new website, bringing together all our docs and resources. This is the thing we hope to launch later this year. And we're focusing on making it clearer and easier for new contributors to participate in our projects. And we're seeing this already. We've had amazing new people come out and make our tools better for everybody. And if you're interested in contributing to open source, there's a lot of opportunity here. And we're being very intentional in this evolution of our community. We're leading with our values. More than anything, we want Hanakai to be a welcoming place for those who bring kindness, curiosity, and care. A place where people of all backgrounds and experience levels can feel respected and can share and grow. A place for people to feel proud of and to feel safe within. So this also means being clear on what we won't tolerate. Which is why we also place these words right up front on our website and in all our community spaces. We don't tolerate Nazis, transphobes, racists, or bigotry of any kind. It's not a radical position, but we are here for people before technology. Now, to understand our final goal, we need to visit another time in Murakami's life, one that even predates his life as a runner. Before Murakami became a runner and a novelist, he spent 7 years running a jazz bar in Tokyo. He and his wife hated the idea of having to fit into the system of orthodoxy. So in 1974, they took their own path and opened up this bar, even before they'd done with university. They had records playing constantly and young musicians performing live jazz on the weekends. It sounds like a wonderful space, but it was hard work for them. And it was while he opened this bar that Murakami decided to write his first novel. He would spend 1 to 2 hours writing in his kitchen every night after closing up. He had to write in spurts, snatching bits of time here and there, completing against the clock as he wrote. And when he recalled this time, Murakami said, "I felt like I was living enough for two people's lives." And then he did it all over again for his second novel. And only after that, he finally decided to shut the bar down because this was not the environment to produce the complex and profound works he would come to be known for. Well, running this bar and writing on the side is where I and where the Hanakai project have been for the last decade, nights and weekends the whole time. And like Murakami, I know a change is necessary to make things more sustainable, to create the environment to build even better things. So that's why our second major goal is to fundraise for the sustainable maintenance of Hanakai. We spent the last 10 years building a comprehensive ecosystem. Well, now we need your help to take it to the next level. We need you and your businesses to become Hanakai patrons. And our goal is just to start paying the people who build these tools. We're starting it 1 day a week. This has already happened for me. I've committed to it this year. And then if we can, from Sean Collins, my fellow teammate. And this is a modest first target, but we already know it's having a big impact on our project and on our people. And we've gotten as far as we have thanks to these founding patrons. So I want to share a thank you to Sidekick, Honey Badger, Fast Ruby, App Signal, and Ruby's own Brandon Weaver. And we still have some way to go to get to our target, but this is a good first step. And we'd really love it if you would like to join these people as founding patrons of Hanakai. You can help make a better Ruby. This is why we're doing all of this after all. We're doing it because we love Ruby. We have just one Ruby. Ruby is our knees. We need to take care of it. On the surface, Murakami's memoir is about his life as a runner and his connection to his life as a novelist. But at a deeper level, this is a quiet but powerful meditation on his acceptance of his individuality and his embrace of his individual purpose. On his writing, Murakami wrote, "I never had ambitions to be a great writer. I just wanted to write something that was mine and that no one else could write." And then on his running, "I didn't start running because somebody asked me to become a runner, just like I didn't become a novelist because somebody asked me to. One day, out of the blue, I wanted to write a novel. And one day, out of the blue, I started to run simply because I wanted to. I've always done whatever I felt like doing in life." So what do I talk about when I talk about Ruby? Well, I want to see a Ruby where we reduce the barriers to people simply doing what they want to do, being their true selves, writing the things only they could write. With Ruby, we're already blessed with a language that supports all kinds of programmer expression, but what I want for us is to match that with the community and the ecosystem we build around the tools. A more diverse Ruby, both socially and technically. And this is how we nourish our community. A more diverse Ruby can keep more of our people here because they can find the tools and the groups that suit the way they want to work. And a more diverse Ruby, most critically, can help attract people and grow our community because we can offer a wider range of options. Together, we can make the homes for all the black sheep, but more than just the black sheep, the white sheep, the pink sheep, the blue sheep, all the colors. Now, on my personal journey, it was those 10 years ago in 2015 when I discovered my place and my purpose within Ruby's diversity. And that is when I finally discovered the Ruby that truly suited me as a person, the Ruby I wanted to do for the long run. And then once Murakami found writing, he took up his long runs so he could live and write for longer. And for me, once I found that kind of Ruby, that's when I started building tools that we see in Hanakai, so I could write and see more of that Ruby in the world. And just like running marathons, this is work that requires persistence. And I truly feel that in some weeks and months. But Murakami puts it well. Pain is inevitable, he said, but suffering is optional. Hard things become easier when you feel that connection to purpose. I've been doing this for 10 years now, and with some help, I'm ready to do it as long as I can. And Murakami is a worthy role model here, for me and for all of us, I think. He is still running every day, well into his 70s, and he's made it past 40 marathons across his life. Now, I haven't run a marathon myself, and I've had some people say maybe I should do after this talk, but even without that experience, I completely understand Murakami when he describes a good run as being contagious. In my case, it was only after striking out on my own direction that I started truly learning and getting the most from my work with Ruby. And then everything fell into place from there. Ruby changed me, and in turn, I changed Ruby too. And my hope is that we can help others forge their own directions and together create a more interesting, more diverse Ruby for all of us. So, this has been my journey with Ruby, part of my own little spoken memoir, the path I followed, and where I hope we can go in the future. And today, as you all join in on the Open Summit and eventually go your own separate ways, I'd love for you to take a moment and ask yourself, well, what's the path that you can take, that you want to take in Ruby? What is it that only you can do? And if you think of something, well, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email. My email's on my website. And if the path you'd like to take overlaps with ours, well, please check out Hanami and when it launches, Hanakai. Whether you want to try it, to contribute, or even provide financial support as a business or an individual, we'd love to hear from you. Uh, so that's it from me to the Open Summit organizers. Thank you for bringing me here. And to all of you, thank you for hearing what I talk about when I talk about Ruby.
Thank you, Tim. So inspiring. I think a lot of us in the audience are leaving the talk either wanting to run a marathon, reading Murakami's book, or contributing to Hanami, at least trying Hanami, trying creating an application with it. I think there's a lot of engagement on the chat, so we do have some questions for you and some limited time, unfortunately. So let's start with that.
Let's get through what we can. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sarah, I'll let you feed me the questions and I'll answer them as
yeah,
best I can. Yeah.
yeah, sure. So I think one of the quickest one we could start with was Jean asked about why do we add a to array in the bookshop ripple?
Yeah. So the job of repos is to make requests to the database, and then the word we use is materialize those requests as actual values. And so in repos, you're doing generally one of two things, which is returning an individual object or a collection of objects. And so when you call .one in your repo methods, it's saying I'm returning an individual object, or one with a bang on the end, exclamation, saying I expect there to be exactly one object, and it's an error if not. Or you call to which takes the query and gives you an array of all the results. And so the reason we do this is to create that boundary, because when you call either of those, that is when the repos create all the struct objects. And at that point, they're just pure data and they have no connection back to that database, which means you can work with them far and wide across your app and not have to worry about things blending across that layer and causing you grief down the track.
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
yeah,
Makes sense to
yeah.
me.
The idea with repos is that you're explicitly building the API, and that's part of the vocabulary that you use to do it.
Nice. Another question we have, do you have example of companies and projects that use Hanami production and the reasons that made them choose it?
Yes, it is used in production. I mean, if you want, come join our chat. I put a Discord invite in the Discord and ask around. There are some places that I have worked with, used it in production, and some places where I've moved on and someone else is happily maintaining it in production. Generally, the reasons it's chosen is because the people who are building the apps have done enough Ruby to know that some more clear upfront design is useful for the long-term maintainability of those apps. And Hanami gives you the tools to do that by firstly getting out of your way when you want to do the software design of the core of your domain. But secondly, giving you all the primitives that help you create your app as a collection of clear layers, making your dependencies really clear, separating your persistence from business logic, and so on. All of those things are chosen by people who know that uh, yeah, it's a worthwhile trade-off to sacrifice a tiny bit of velocity in the first few months for the benefit of an easier to maintain app once you get to the third or fourth year.
Yeah, absolutely. Niall also asked, are slices equivalent to bounded context in DDD terms?
Yeah, pretty much. Um, we picked a name without any baggage just because you can use them in whichever way you want, but they definitely can be used um, to build DDD's bounded contexts. If you look, Rails engines, for instance, are a similar technology, but with Hanami and the way we work with slices is that they're really part of the development experience from the very beginning, and they're built to be ergonomic as part of your job in sort of building out the app. They're basically every Hanami slice is like a tiny miniature Hanami app with all the same affordances, and that allows you to move from one part to the other without any sort of impedance mismatches or any sort of things becoming difficult as you traverse that boundary.
Oh, great. I do have a question of my own.
Hmm.
I think that's people may be interested in that as well. Is there any area of the Hanami project that you're interested in getting more contributions on?
Oh, all of them. The thing about Hanami is that it has really solid fundamentals. Like it's a different programming model, and I think that in itself is the value prop. You come to Hanami because you realize that when you blend everything together, it just becomes messy, even if you go into your app with the best of intentions. But on top of that value prop is there's just heaps of polish that we can add. For instance, back in version one of Hanami, we had resources in our routing DSL. And then as part of building version two, which is now quite a few years old, that did not carry over. And we've had Andrea Fomera come in and just build resource routing back into Hanami because she was trying it out and she realized, yeah, I really want this. And there's tons of little things like that, low-hanging fruit. We had someone add a bin setup script to our app generator, David Sellis, which I merged just today. So if you go in, what I would recommend to people is go in, try it, because you'll learn something just by the act of trying it. I think that's an inherently like useful thing to do, even if you choose not to continue with it. But if you like it, and then you'll pretty quickly come across something that, oh yeah, this could be made a bit nicer, or like I'm used to this from other frameworks, I'd like to bring it in. And we're trying to really lean in on making the contributors' experience as good as possible. And I'm always on the lookout for um, people who are coming with questions or have put together some code that needs review and things like that. So, uh, yeah, there's plenty of low-hanging fruit, and yeah, you'll probably recognize it pretty quickly just by trying it, the things that you'd like to add yourself.
Oh, great. And then if anybody's interested in trying and then there's any problems, I think the community is going to be there hanging on the Discord to help others, beginners, even if you have never contributed to open source. I do encourage you to try it today. I think we do have another question.
Hmm.
Any thoughts on how Hanami might be used as a part of a hexagonal ports and adapters architecture?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much designed from the ground up to help you do that clearly. I mean, I it's been a while since I've studied that architecture, so I probably can't recount it to you with accuracy, but um, I'm pretty sure that the idea of the hexagon when you draw it, it's got these little knobs on either end, which are the connections to your different subsystems of the app. I mean, that's exactly how repos work in Hanami. And we give you the patterns that make that easy to emulate with your own code as well. And in fact, ROM is a really powerful toolkit. You can have ROM in a multi-adapter setup, so it doesn't just talk to SQL. It can also talk to Elasticsearch. It can talk to other databases. It can talk to YAML files. It can talk to HTTP APIs. So all of those you can set up with the tools that we have. And then when you want to go and build your own, you're actually guided by the architecture of the tools that you get out of the box with Hanami. The patterns that they exhibit are actually good patterns for you to take and model for your own code. On the other hand, say if you're building Rails, you look at the controllers, that's not a normal Ruby object. Like you never call .new on a controller. It's got all these different methods and it does so many different things. What is the life cycle? But with Hanami, every single object, just like I showed in that testing slide, is a class that you can call new on. Uh, when you initialize it, it takes dependencies or like static config, stuff that never changes over the lifecycle of the object. And then it offers one or more methods that take input, do some work, and return an output. It's a really simple architecture for these objects, object design that we use across the whole thing. And that is something that you can be inspired by and use for your own code. And that I think will help you create good, clear, testable, maintainable code. And all of that can be used to express the hexagonal architecture or whatever else you'd like to build your app in.
Absolutely makes sense. Um, did I miss any questions from the chat, or anybody else wants to ask a question? We do have 3 minutes left. Give them a minute.
Cool. Well, yeah, we can hang out for 2 more minutes, but yeah, I'll fill the airtime with a recommendation.
Of course, yeah, please do.
If you're just interested at all, and you're a Discord person, just come and hang out there because you'll probably just see some things fly by in the future that are interesting to you. We also have a forum where stuff gets posted at a slightly lower frequency, and yeah, I'd just love to chat to any of you. If you have questions, reach out to me directly, email, DMs on the Discord for this event or in the Hanami Discord. I'd be very happy to chat to you all in the future. So, yeah, thank you everyone for having me and for giving me your time today.
Yeah, so much good feedback on the chat. Let's give team a round of applause with emojis, with reactions. All right, I'm gonna give
Cool.
everybody maybe 2 minutes break before our next session. It was great to be here with you, and then I'll be back in a future session. See you around. Bye.